Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to ioRadio with your host, Adam Smith. Today on the show, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to talk about a project that I've been working on for the last week or so, and something that I've been doing on a regular basis for the last couple of years, and that is going through the Bitcoin conference, the convention that they have every year, the big national convention where all of the crypto Bitcoin people get together. Now, I have not attended this conference. I have attended it virtually by watching the live streams and pouring through basically just hours and hours of footage from the convention, the speakers, and the panels and all that. So a good bit of the conference is actually available online through the website Bitcoin Magazine. And so I have, over the years, originally, since we're critics and we talk about this stuff, we research it, and you look through this stuff, and some of it is pretty mind-numbing. Some of it is hilariously funny. Some of it is kind of disturbing. So I want to talk with you about my impression this year versus last year and the year before, and what my impression is about what's happening with the industry. And I'll talk specifically about the Hilight reel that I've put together that I released yesterday. This is the third year in a row that I've done this, and it kind of started by accident, basically. I would sift through the material for one project or another, and I found that some of the stuff was just so cringy, and some of it was so gratuitously dishonest that I found myself rearranging some of the parts of the conference to make it a little bit more honest, or to showcase how kind of redundant and cult-like the whole industry is. And so that's kind of resulted in a fan favorite, this annual remix that I do of the convention that I put out. I just dropped the third version of it yesterday. It's called Bitcoin 2024 Highlight Reel from Nashville, and I'm gonna play it for you. It's only about 13 minutes in total, and I'm gonna also talk about what was going on and how I put the thing together. Obviously, I've taken 3 days worth of material and condensed it down into roughly 10 minutes. So a lot of stuff has been taken out of context. That goes without saying, but I will say I would argue that I have taken these clips out of context and I have actually put them in a more rational, more honest, more cohesive context than they were presented originally. Obviously, people will argue with me, but I think I can make a strong case for that. Of course, I also did it to kind of call attention to how absurd a lot of the content is and the things that the speakers are saying at this convention. And I'll happily comment on that. If anybody wants to discuss or debate it, bring it on. That's perfectly cool. As always, I'm willing to give a platform to anybody that has anything interesting and informative to say, whether or not you agree with me or not. Come on and let's talk. So let's go over the Bitcoin convention. This year it was held in Nashville, Tennessee. In the previous year, I think maybe even the previous 2 years, it was held in Florida. And what's funny about its previous location was I'm under the impression that it was one of the few venues that had very loose restrictions, COVID restrictions on mask wearing and stuff like that. And one of the things that I found is that there's a great correlation between people in the Bitcoin industry and the whole anti-vaxxer, anti-mask movement. They often cite groups like the Canadian truckers as champions of freedom and liberty. This is basically a group of transportation workers that drove 18-wheelers, from the United States to Canada and hauled, materials for making the economy work. And during COVID, there were restrictions put up by Canada that said, if you haven't been vaccinated, you can't come into the country, right? And most truckers and most people got vaccinated. The science is there and it showed that it worked. But there was a small contingent of people who just decided that was against their freedom. Now, they were not forced to get vaccinations, but if they wanted to go into Canada, they had to have them. They had to show that they had them. There was a small subset of people, but a very loud one on social media that decried their freedom had been infringed on. That argument is just completely absurd, but the crypto people glommed onto it because it's another one of those weird fringe edge cases where they can, although desperately, try to argue that crypto would have helped these people, right? This anti-vax movement, they solicited donations online from like-minded, and I use the term minded very loosely, people to support their cause. And so people donated to this fund for the Canadian truckers because they are out of work now because they created this caravan where they went around and they blocked major thoroughfares and they literally disrupted the economy. And Canada was not going to have any of that. If you want to protest, that's fine, but do not disrupt the operation of society. If you've got these truckers blocking the highways and they can't get emergency vehicles and other things by, that's bad. By all means protest, but you can't infringe on other people's civil liberties. That's where you cross a line. Same thing with the whole anti-vax movement in the first place. If you don't want to get vaccinated and you want to die of COVID, by all means, you could do that. Nobody is going to force you. There never was a mandate. That's another word that was abused. There never was a mandate that you had to have the vaccine. But various places, they are perfectly free to require that if you want to come into my place, you have to have the vaccine, you have to wear a mask, etc. So again, these people thought that they had a right to run around and infect everybody on the planet, and that was part of their civil rights and their freedom, which is complete crap. So I know I got off on a tangent there, but it really does bug me, and in an upcoming episode, I'll be talking more about that. Of course, crypto solves this because what happened was the truckers collected all of this money, and then the Canadian government froze the bank accounts, and they didn't get it. Crypto people argue that if this had been Bitcoin, the Canadian government wouldn't have been able to seize all that stuff, which is not true because you can't buy anything with Bitcoin. At some point, you'd have to convert that Bitcoin back into real money in order to buy things, and that's where the sanctions or whatever would get you because you still have to cross paths with modern society. This is just one of those things that crypto people conveniently ignore. And at the convention this year, there was so many invisible elephants in the room that it really started to get to me. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about how the crypto people at these conventions, they talk about one side of crypto, but there's other sides they completely ignore that are very important sides. And I think what I showcase is just how one-sided the conversation is. And of course, let's face it, it's a Bitcoin convention, so it is going to be an echo chamber. But the irony is these are people that are talking about their freedom, their liberty, their freedom of speech. They feel like everything has been squelched. And they had speakers this year from various social media companies that were bucking the trend and allowing crazy right-wing people to be able to spew whatever they wanted without any kind of repercussions. And of course, I found, there was a lot of irony in that. First off, you could go watch the live stream, right? You could watch it on YouTube, and there's a chat room there, so you can chat in real time as this stuff is going on. But if you say anything even remotely critical of Bitcoin, poof, you're timed out. You're put in this box where you no longer have the privileges to be able to post. So all these free speech absolutists have zero tolerance for anybody in the chat room that suggests anything that they're promoting is not kosher, So obviously, they're a bunch of hypocrites. So let's dive into the little highlight reel that I put together, and I'll talk about it along the way. And if you're just listening and you're not watching, you should still be able to get it. I'll try to narrate a little bit, but this is a video, and you can catch it online at YouTube/American Scream Video. So let's get this thing going.
We started with a dream to build a community focused on Bitcoin.
But our country is blessed to have the extraordinary talent, energy, and genius represented in this room. Not all of you.
Okay, so obviously I'm throwing stuff in just to be funny, right? Trump actually did come on and say, there's all this genius, not all of you. And then he said, but most of you. But it's just funny there's a section on Trump. There's a section on RFK Jr. There's a section with Russell Brand. There's a section with Max Kaiser and a few other people. I just basically kind of focused on Edward Snowden and some other people that were some of the primary speakers at the event. Cynthia Loomis. And I'm going to talk about them and what they were promoting, because some of it is really disturbing in the amount of dishonesty that we're getting at. And after I'm pouring through all of this stuff, if you've got any kind of sense of ethics and morality and rational thought, you start to either lose faith in humanity, get angry, or just your brain turns to mush. So I had to, it was like a survival instinct. Taking this footage and throwing it into something that was funny was kind of my coping mechanism. So here's the, I don't know if this is the governor of Tennessee or the mayor of Nashville, but he's a little recurring theme, as you'll find here.
Welcome to the great state of Tennessee.
Nobody knows what's going on.
I cannot tell you how happy and excited we are to welcome you to the land of liberty, freedom, and prosperity.
So if you really want freedom, you want to smell the volcano of freedom, move to El Salvador, fuck the U.S.
So I cut in a little segment from Max Kaiser's talk right there, kind of just showing the contradiction, one person talking about the United States, the other person talking about fuck the U.S., and we'll get into Max Kaiser and his crazy obsession with El Salvador. And then, of course, Michael Saylor, another one of our kind of keynote people, and that's him right here.
Freedom. 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 Freedom.
Freedom.
Individual freedom.
Freedom.
Freedom. Liberty and freedom.
Freedom.
So, obviously, freedom was such a recurring theme. I went through and I snagged all the little bits where people were saying freedom. And there's also a segment where the official from Nashville says free liberty and freedom, liberty and freedom. And this was me having fun. I took that little scary skull head from They Live and I put it over him. I kind of got the feeling that this whole convention was kind of like a scene out of the movie They Lived, where there's these aliens that are have taken over society and they're kind of brainwashing people. I kind of get this thing has that vibe, if you know what I'm talking about.
The freest freedom.
Sounds like economic freedom.
It's freedom, money.
Liberty. Freedom.
Freedom.
Ultimately, the number one value that underlines everything here is freedom.
Freedom.
Decentralized.
And of course, in addition to freedom and liberty, there's decentralization, there's self-sovereignty. Every year the convention more firmly aligns itself with right-wing ideals. It's often masked as libertarianism, but their version of libertarianism really does include quite a significant degree of fascist behavior. They widely acknowledge that rules are for other people, not themselves, although oftentimes they mostly talk about how rules are just bad in general. They never explain how all of these rules create a comfortable society. And, of course, this is it. Buckle up, put your seatbelts on, because we're taking a ride into right-wing libertarian land.
Decentralized. Decentralization.
Self-sovereignty.
Sovereignty.
Self-sovereignty.
Self-sovereignty.
Liberty and freedom.
Self-sovereignty.
Taxation is theft. People that are sucking at the teeth.
Number go up. It's going to the moon.
Money printer.
Money printer.
Money printing.
So there's our intro. And then we get to Edward Snowden's keynote speech. He initially comes on, there's no audience sound, and you see him basically on a screen. I don't know where he is, maybe somewhere in Russia, hiding out from the authorities. And I think what Edward Snowden originally did in releasing classified documents to show some stuff was a noble act. I support him, but like Julian Assange, who wanted information to be free, these guys tend to, once they catch a little bit of heat, then they kind of go off in some weird direction and they glom on to anybody that will offer them a little bit of protection, which in this case seems to be Russia, a nation state that really does seem to have a very aggressive interest in just messing with the United States and destabilizing the United States and doing all kinds of nefarious things. So now we've got these, quote, freedom fighters that a lot of people in the tech community and the libertarian community think are heroes, who maybe have done some stuff that is worthy of admiring, but now have kind of jumped in bed with a really bad actor. And I think the same thing applies with Edward Snowden, as well as Julian Assange. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details, and I'm not saying I've got everything completely correct, but let's listen to what Edward Snowden has to say.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be with you. This is an amazing crowd. All right, everybody. I can't hear you, so I'm just going to plow right in.
I was going to put some cricket sounds in there, but I thought it might be a little heavy-handed. But the point is, this tech conference has all kinds of weird technical problems, which is, I guess, par for the course.
There's something in our DNA right here in Tennessee that matches what I think everybody in this room feels.
Militaristic 20th century style demagoguery.
And this is me making the truth mix, right? The guy from Tennessee talking about what's special about down here and what we're doing. And then I don't remember what context I lifted Russell Brand's statement about that, but I thought a lot of what he was talking about really did, he was one of the people that seemed to be willing to pick on the community, whereas a lot of people would not do that. It's hard to tell whether he was talking about other people or he really was talking about the Bitcoin people. But there's a lot of demagoguery going on in this convention.
Trying to get something for nothing. Support your local black market.
Gary Gensler.
He's a nice-looking guy. He's okay.
The game is rigged, but we can't leave.
They're all fucking crazy, these guys.
We're not playing games.
It's a con.
Yeah, we're like the IRA.
We take the low road.
We are winning, ladies and gentlemen.
Bitcoin is the new guillotine of the 21st century.
There's an increasing concentration of resources into fewer and fewer hands.
And this is another recurring theme, right? The Bitcoin people are supposed to be stopping these very powerful special interests from from destroying our freedom. But if you look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin has an even greater concentration of wealth in the hands of the few than any other monetary system. So it doesn't accomplish what it promises, and that's another one of these invisible elephants that nobody wants to talk about. There's just so much projection, so much psychological projection happening at this community. And that's what I kind of showed in the remix, right? Is, Bitcoin is anti-war. And then, no, Bitcoin is gunpowder, Bitcoin is love. And then you got somebody screaming, kill the central bankers. There's absolutely zero consistency to what the message of Bitcoin is. This is why it looks more like a cult than a technology, because there's 30,000 different sects of Christianity. You go into different churches and their version of who Jesus is and what he wants is completely different. And a lot of times, like in traditional religions, you'll see religions talk about being the religion of peace, and then here they are promoting intolerance. It was exactly the same at the convention. There's no Bible. Well, they claim there's Bibles like Satoshi's white paper or whatever, but everything is so vague, just like the Bible, that people can kind of take the concept and run with it and make it whatever they want. And that's what I showcase a lot in this, is how different people have made Bitcoin about completely different things.
So what happens when they figure it out? That's going to really be something.
Has that ever happened with us? Never.
That's about the end of the fun part of this talk.
Okay, so now we get into another segment where I kind of cut up Bitcoin and have some fun.
Bitcoin.
Liberty and freedom.
Bitcoin.
Money that is printed out of thin air.
BTC.
Bitcoin is love.
It's a con.
It seemed almost to me something like a fad or a novelty.
So I don't remember what RFK Jr. there was talking about, but obviously it makes more sense putting it in the context of Bitcoin than whatever he was saying.
Bitcoin is a magic mirror.
Daddy Bitcoin.
And most people have no idea what the hell it is. You know that, right?
You don't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you.
Essentially, they're monetizing autism.
So that comment by Russell Brand, I just really glommed onto it. it resonated a lot with me. Essentially, they're monetizing autism. He had a couple of, even though I used to really like Russell Brand. I really liked him when he was an atheist and he seemed more rational. Now he has come to Jesus and he's just completely lost his marbles, become an anti-vaxxer and all this other stuff. I don't understand what is happening with some of these people. I mean, I guess I recognize that, anybody can have similarities with other people. That doesn't mean that they really are thinking the same way you are, or their rationale or the way they identify what they consider to be truth as consistent with your own process. So, yeah, the idea that crypto monetizes autism I know it can be considered kind of offensive, not necessarily the best characterization, but the fact that there are people that are just cognitively ignoring gaping holes in the theory behind this system makes you wonder where they are on the spectrum, what parts of their brain may actually not be functioning properly.
A little orange asset that could.
Bitcoin free here at home. Free at last. Free at last.
So as this parade continues, we see Tim Scott, an actual U.S. senator, misquoting Martin Luther King Jr. to promote Bitcoin. I found this to be really quite offensive. And I'm not a person of color, but I have great respect for what Martin Luther King Jr. was trying to promote in his I Have a Dream speech. And I'm pretty sure it was not a crypto Ponzi scheme. So I would hope this clip comes back to bite him, because I think it's really, really, although he's a Republican, so, who cares about decorum?
It's a rough world, okay? Bitcoin fixes this.
They're all fucking crazy, these guys.
Bitcoin has been mischaracterized as money.
Bitcoin is a lot of things to a lot of people, and for me, what I think it is, Bitcoin is the best money human beings have ever been able to invent. That's what it is.
I like it.
So, as you can see, lots of people at this convention contradicting each other. I mean, I'm cutting their talks into little pieces, but essentially what they're saying is what they're saying. The ideas that I excise and stack up are not fundamentally changed by me rearranging them. Some people think Bitcoin is money. Some people don't think Bitcoin is money. Some people think Bitcoin is freedom. Some people think Bitcoin is love. That's the abstraction where it becomes more of a cult than it is a science or a technology. And I think it becomes ever present as you watch more and more of what goes on at the convention.
If we put $3.3 million.
Okay, I want to preface this. This is Cynthia Loomis, a senator from Wyoming, an actual U.S. senator, a member of Congress. Now, as some may know, apparently not a lot of Bitcoin people, but Congress is responsible for pretty much the monetary policy and overseeing the Fed and handling the spending of the country. Everybody likes to blame it on the president, but it's really Congress that controls the purse strings. So as a member of Congress, you're generally supposed to have an idea of how finances and economy and things like that work. Now listen to what she said. If we take 3.3 million
in a Bitcoin reserve, we will eliminate the United States debt. We will be debt-free because of Bitcoin.
Yes, you heard that right. If we take 3.3 million and put it into some kind of a Bitcoin piggy bank, wave your wand, click your heels together 3 times, we will be debt-free. It will eliminate the national debt. I have no idea exactly how that would happen. In order to be able to offset debt, you have to bring actual value, to do that. Again, in order for Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin to elevate to the point where 3.3 million could suddenly equal trillions and trillions of dollars, where does the value come that drives that price up? It's like these people don't have any idea of even the most basic kind of economic theory. It's very, very troubling when you realize that this is a United States senator, Now, granted, I don't know how many people in Wyoming vote, whether it's single digits or triple digits or what, but enough of them put this dingbat into office to where she's making statements like this that is just offensive to anybody that has any intelligence. I understand, politicians are going to make these crazy promises, but shouldn't there be some kind of limit to how absurd your arguments are? So, of course, in lieu of this, as I'm going through other footage, I edit a few things in and stick it after her statement to just maybe add my own spin on things.
Lunatic.
Factual errors.
You motherfuckers are all going to be rich.
The country would have to file for Chapter 11.
The AIs are going to want the Bitcoin.
Insane, to put it simply.
They're all a bit weird.
We vibrate money.
They're the bad autists. We need the good autists.
Okay, so it's my little response thing with different people. Now we get into the section of the video that I called Michael Saylor's Daily Affirmations. So for those of you who may not be aware, Michael Saylor is pretty much one of the patron saints or the prophets of Bitcoin. He was the founder of a public company called MicroStrategy that actually was a tech company that actually produced actual useful goods and services, unlike crypto businesses. And somewhere along the line in 2021 or so, he decided that he was going to take any of the cash that the company had on hand and invested in Bitcoin. And he's continued to do that over the last couple of years, buying into Bitcoin to the point where MicroStrategy is less a tech company than it is a holding company for Bitcoin. And he's basically leveraged the entire company. And of course, I don't know how many shares he has. Obviously, he has enough to be able to exert this crazy kind of control over a public company. But I really feel sorry for the shareholders in this company that are going to be taken for a ride at the expense of his obsession with Bitcoin. So as such, he is the ultimate maximalist in Bitcoin. And of course, whenever he shows up, I mean, he tweets like almost multiple times a day with bizarre AI created imagery of Bitcoin. And, the rumor is that he's on all kinds of weird drugs just because of the way he writes about bizarre stuff. So no Bitcoin convention is complete without Michael Saylor showing up and telling everybody that Bitcoin is just going to go to the stratosphere. And his standard approach is fairly consistent. He spends the lion's share of his time talking about how absolutely horrible the status quo is, how everything is going to steal all your money and value, inflation is killing everything, and in this thing, he just doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on every conceivable scenario to make you realize that the status quo of anything we could put our money into is just a nightmare, right? And then, of course, at the very end, Bitcoin fixes this. How does Bitcoin fix it? That's, don't look behind the camera. Don't pull the curtain. Just trust him that Bitcoin is going to be $13 million in 20 years, and that's going to magically fix everything. And this is basically his thing. So I took all of his doom and gloom and I put it into a little segment I like to call Michael Saylor's Daily Affirmations. And now it's time for Michael Saylor's Daily Affirmations.
Everything is slow. There's weather, war. The life is being sucked out of you linearly. Can't do things on the weekend. 98% inflation rate. City tax, a county tax. You might get discriminated against. Millions of people are dead. Crime and catastrophe. You could stop right here and be a little bit depressed.
But wait, there's more.
You're also going to get diluted by tariffs and tolls. You can't break even. And torts and transfer. State tax, a federal tax. Going to be hard for you to make a go of it. Transfer tax, a usage tax. Everything is expensive.
But it gets even worse.
You can't win. Someone will slip and fall on the front sidewalk and sue you. You get wiped out while you're asleep on a Saturday night. That's not good.
We return you to your regularly scheduled program. So there's his doom and gloom, and then he starts, more doom and gloom about, crypto people love to use absurd examples as a contrast of why Bitcoin is good. And the common absurd example is talking about inflation, meaning the value of fiat or the dollar or the peso or the euro now is a fraction of what it was 10, 20, 100 years ago. Never mind that people's wages have increased, more people have entered society, that there may be more money that's in circulation, but there's also more value and there's more assets and people are getting paid more. They ignore all of that. They just extract the fact that, a loaf of bread might have cost 10 cents in 1930 and now it's $3. And so they say, well, if you're $3 now, in 70 years is only going to be worth 10 cents. See, because that's the way it was in the past. It's just a really bizarre, stupid analogy. And these guys just will not leave it alone. And so you'll see.
Let's talk about financial assets. I want to keep my money. Start with $1 billion, put it in the peso, and the money is decaying in 2 years.
Of course. Let's pick Argentina and their super screwed up hyperinflative economy and use that as the model, because everybody that he's talking to, I'm sure they're not in Argentina, but that was right on their mind was, I got $1 billion. I'm gonna buy $1 billion in Argentinian pesos. That's what I'm gonna. No, Michael. So why even cite that as an example when even you yourself say it's a stupid idea later on? Like,
you wouldn't invest in ice cream cones. Don't invest in the peso.
So there it is. Now here's his prediction at the very end. Here it is.
Bitcoin's $13 million a coin in the year 2045.
That's it. Just authoritatively, Bitcoin is $13 million a coin in the year 2045. So basically in 20 years, Bitcoin goes from 60K up to $13 million. Now in his presentation, he basically laid out the, under the auspice of covering all the bases. He's got his bearish and his bullish case. So he says in the most bearish case, Bitcoin is maybe $13 million a coin in 20 years. In the bullish case, it's $40 million a coin in 2045. You notice there's no actual case there for Bitcoin going down or staying the same. Every single person at this convention just assumes it's going through the roof, despite the fact that for the last couple of years, it has certainly not done that. This notion that Bitcoin from this point forward is going to follow this trail that happened from like 2009 to 2017 is absurd, because the vast majority of that time, nobody was paying any attention to Bitcoin and nobody thought of it as an investment. It's like a Magic the Gathering cards in 1995. They were just cards. Nobody knew that one of those cards would be worth $40,000 today. But this is their logic,
Based on nothing.
Liberty and freedom.
Let's say you have a lot of money.
Bitcoin is an explosion of love.
Convert your capital to BTC. Convert your cash flows to BTC. Issue equity to buy BTC.
So brainwashed into thinking we have to invest.
Issue debt to buy BTC. You could be the normie.
I'm not a Bitcoin guy.
Don't quit your day job. You could be a double maxi. Normie, maxi, double maxi, triple maxi. And then the triple maxi is you finance the house for Bitcoin, you buy Bitcoin, you flip all your assets to Bitcoin, and then you move to a cheap tax jurisdiction. If enough people think the same way, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now you've got no money left.
So there you have it. And that's what it all comes down to. Michael Saylor is totally pot committed with Bitcoin and his company. So he is basically out there doing the dog and pony shows, telling everybody else, look at what I'm doing. I'm leveraging everything I can. But the truth of the matter is he's not. Michael Saylor is leveraging this public company that he has pawned off on the public and now shareholders. So it's not even his own personal wealth. We don't know. I doubt very seriously he has mortgaged his home or any of his personal property, but he's certainly done it with his public company, and there's going to be a lot of collateral damage when that whole thing collapses. But he's telling you, you really want to put your money where your mouth is. Get rid of all your meaningful real-world assets and put it in Bitcoin. Why? Because 2045, it'll be $13 million a coin. How? Crickets. And this is, those of us that live in the real world, if I want to make some money, I have to provide something of value in return for that money. Yes, it is a fun notion that I can go to a flea market and maybe find some dish that I pay 10 cents for that turns out to be worth $5,000 and was in the Ming Dynasty. But even if I did find one of those, and then I made a YouTube series about it, that doesn't mean that anybody else out there watching has that much of a chance of having it happen to them. But that is basically the model that these crypto people are promoting. Hey, let me tell you what happened with me in a freak financial accident, and it could happen to you too. No. So now we come to the time where RFK Jr. comes on.
A celebration of liberty.
And he had a little fancy video introduction, which I cut up into this. And, of course, he comes on and just cranks the political lunacy up to 11, as you'll see.
We stand here in the name of freedom.
That it's time to heal a divided nation and return the power to the people.
Robert Kennedy Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next president of the United States, Mr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Hello, Bitcoiners. The most cynical political reason for endorsing Bitcoin is to excite the 60 million Bitcoin American holders.
And again, there's typical quote, 60 million Bitcoin American holders. I don't know if that's really been verified. There's a couple of different ways that metrics are using to try to figure out how many people actually have Bitcoin. And this is the interesting thing. Nobody really knows what this Bitcoin lobby, this market is, how many votes they control, but that hasn't stopped both RFK Jr. and Trump from showing up at this thing, doing whatever they can to try to get people's votes. And you'll see the pandering shows absolutely no restrictions. And of course, I can cut up some of Trump's things and inject them here and there, where just to provide a little perspective.
You believe that? Is that right?
On day one as president, I will sign another executive order directing the U.S. Treasury to purchase 550 Bitcoin daily until the U.S. has built a reserve of at least 4 million Bitcoins.
Cast a vote, but don't join a cult.
Again, what's the purpose of a strategic Bitcoin reserve? It just doesn't make any sense. If you are not into the technology, you would be scratching your head, going, "What would be the point of the government buying Bitcoin and hoarding it?" And I'm telling you that I'm a technologist, a software engineer. I understand everything about crypto and blockchain, and I'm scratching my head too. So don't feel bad if it doesn't make sense to you. It just truly doesn't make sense.
Day one as president, I will sign also an executive order directing the IRS to issue public guidelines that all transactions between Bitcoin and the U.S. dollar are unreportable transactions.
Yes, you heard that right. That technically would make money laundering completely legal, since you would be able to transact fiat back and forth into Bitcoin, and the IRS could not pay any attention to that. Again, nobody in their right mind would allow that in a civilized first world country. And this is just another example of how Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is just completely bonkers.
And by extension, non-taxable.
And, of course, tax evasion. Let's legalize that as well. So basically, he's telling the crypto people, we will let you do all the money laundering and tax evasion you want if you vote for me. Which, even if this guy got in office, the chances of that happening are between slim and none. But, boy, these people will eat it up.
We've progressed so little. Why are airplanes so big?
We are on the road to totalitarianism and slavery.
And, of course, lots of just weird non sequiturs out there where people would make these bizarre statements that even in context don't make any more sense than me taking them out of context.
Liberty and freedom.
Over the past year, I've gone even further down the rabbit hole.
You get the sense that you're communicating with some peculiar, odd and inaccessible, insidious mist.
And you might have to have a lot of anxiety and angina.
Again, I love Russell Brand's one-liners. A peculiar, insidious mist. This odd, insidious mist that you're communicating with. Yeah, I get that feeling too, Russell. And you're also part of that insidious mist. We'll get to you in just a minute. But first, here comes Trump.
The extraordinary spectacle of Donald Trump, just fresh from his resurrection, just one earlobe down.
Hello, Bitcoiners. Thank you very much. Secret Service just told me, sir, would like a little more time. I said, you take all the time you want.
Of course, that joke, I'm sure he's going to get a lot of traction out of that and be saying it for the next couple of months. But what you don't hear probably in the little segments is the second half of that, where he basically insults everybody.
You can take 2 hours, 3 hours, the hell with the people that have been waiting out here.
And you have talent, like real important talent that are speaking their minds and really kind of waking up to everything and telling the world what they think.
They slander you as criminals, but that happened to me too because I said the election was rigged. Another one, Jake Paul, Winklevoss. These are great guys. They look like male models with a brain.
Yeah, so when Trump first came out at the Bitcoin convention, lots of name dropping of so-and-so's here, so-and-so's here. It took about half of his speech before he even started to get into Bitcoin.
You know, where's Kid Rock? They're all special people. Billy Ray Cyrus is here. Where's Billy Ray? He's a conservative guy. Said, how did you get such a liberal daughter? How did that happen, Billy Ray? We have to talk about Bitcoin. I've heard from some of your great geniuses that talk to me about this subject.
So once he said that, I'm like, okay, let me find one of these great geniuses and throw this little bit in. And of course, Michael Saylor, pretty much the ultimate Bitcoin genius. So let's hear from him.
Trade your ice cream cone that's melting for the peso for the dollar for the land, and the land for the Bitcoin.
There you go, folks. Trade everything up till you get that land and then flip the land for the Bitcoin. I wonder who's going to be doing the trading of the Bitcoin for the land. Perhaps Mr. Saylor?
Just 15 years, Bitcoin has gone from merely an idea.
Number go up.
Posted anonymously on an internet message board.
99% libertarians and ANCAPs.
PSYOP within a PSYOP.
To being
This is not a good long duration asset.
the 9th most valuable asset anywhere in the world.
Don't trust, verify.
The reason I've come to address the Bitcoin community today can be summed up in two very simple words.
Liberty and freedom.
Richard Nixon.
I don't know why he said Richard Nixon, but I knew as soon as he said that, I had to put that right there. Everything short of him saying, I am not a crook.
I have a special flower for Donald Trump. When I see him, I'd like to present this flower and express my love and gratitude for at least raising the political game in America to a new standard of forthrightness and truthfulness.
Yes, Donald Trump, a standard of truthfulness, according to Max Kaiser, who basically is now employed by the nation of El Salvador to promote it. You heard him earlier say, fuck the USA. During his presentation, he admits that he will vote for Trump and that he is an American citizen, even though he's being basically paid by the Russians at some point, and now apparently the El Salvadorians to do something. I don't know, scream at people mainly, it seems like. Yeah, he's a real interesting character.
We have the best economy, the highest standard of living, the safest and most beautiful cities. And by the way, when I say safest, our cities are going to hell right now.
We're Music City. We want to be Bitcoin City, okay?
And we'll be using fossil fuel to make electricity.
Energy is money.
But we will be creating so much electricity that you'll be saying, please, please, President, we don't want any more electricity. We can't stand it. This afternoon, I'm laying out my plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet.
Bitcoin's immortal.
Let me tell you, if they win this election, every one of you will be gone. But right now, because of me, they're leaving you alone. So please say thank you, President Trump.
So there you go. Just the most arrogant political leader I've ever run across, really. What else is there to say? Trump is being Trump. So let's get to Russell Brand, who shows up, and he has a few interesting things to say, too. And he's just basically left the reservation. It's unfortunate.
Boom. Thank you so much for having us at the Crypto Olympics. Being a tech billionaire used to be fun and about yachts and probably womanizing. If you decentralize power, something beautiful happens almost automatically.
Liberty and freedom.
Number go up.
What did they say about Bitcoin? It'll all be used to trade drugs and pornography. And I bet some people have done that, Chris. When people are allowed to live deregulated and free, what emerges are something closer to our higher nature.
Narcissistic, self-serving assholes.
They want to get each other. They want to kill each other.
Technological feudalism.
Truckers
in Canada.
One trucker told me that he was going to jail because he couldn't make mandatory alimony payments.
I love that the Canadian truckers are some heroic, iconic archetype for crypto bros, right? These guys that basically just refused to get vaccinated and therefore were restricted in where they could drive their trucks. And that somehow was a restriction of their freedom. And then they wanted to go around blockading major transportation areas and disrupting the economy because they were little babies and that were too afraid to get a needle stuck in their arm. And then you've got people like RFK Jr. and Russell Brand who pick up their torch and try to elevate them as some kind of really, some heroic entity, which is complete hogwash. Most truckers got the vaccine and didn't have any problem. There was a few of them, and they decided to be whiny babies and try to create some blockades. The reason why the crypto people love them is because they think that they're an example of that Bitcoin could have solved their problem, right? These truckers were committing acts of civil disobedience that were interfering with legitimate necessary functions in society, where they were blocking highways and stuff like that. And the Canadian government's like, you can't do that. You want to protest, you can protest, but you can't stop, transportation and ambulances and fire trucks or whatever. So the truckers were, they were soliciting donations from people like-minded, and I use that term very loosely, minded. And so they had some money. The Canadian government froze those accounts, and they couldn't get access to the money. Now, crypto people argue that if that had been in Bitcoin, no government would have been able to freeze their assets. But that's bullshit, because at some point, in order to use the money, it would have to pass through some kind of a gateway that the government could control, because there's no place where you can, for example, send alimony payments to your ex-wife in crypto. I don't think that's a standard thing, or food or water. You have to convert it into fiat in order to make it useful. So the government's still going to get you no matter what. So there's not a lot of logic in it, but they love grabbing at that. And Canadian Truckers is one of those icons that as long as you don't look too close, it might seem to make sense, but it doesn't really.
And our higher principles.
Kill the central bankers!
Rather than our lower. We're being taught to fear fascism.
Bukele! Bukele!
In their rationalism and materialism.
Bukele, come on, Bukele!
That's Max Kaiser holding up an El Salvador flag, promoting the guy that's paying him right now. In contrast with Russell Brand talking about how rationalism and materialism is now a bad thing. You could just see the weird dichotomy of personalities that are present at this crazy circus.
They have sought right down to the microscopic level to replace God.
Bitcoin is Lord!
And to replace the authority of God with rationalism and materialism, to make rationalism the highest authority.
Look at what they thought the future would be from like 1950, right? They thought we would have flying cars and we'd be able to go from, we'd have colonies on Mars and stuff like that. Where's that progress? None of that has happened because fiat slows everything down.
Again, it's amazing the correlations that these people bring up. Like, we don't have flying cars and colonies on Mars, so it's because of fiat. It's because of inflation. Again, a normal person is just going to go like, what the hell are you talking about? But in this echo chamber they've created once a year, which is a mirror of lots of social media communities where there really is no tolerance for anybody to question these crazy claims. This stuff just circles around and around and gets more and more, fetid each revolution, and this is what you end up with.
Salvador is a beacon of freedom.
Bitcoin, which is a freedom movement. You have companies like Rumble and X and Truth that are freedom movements.
Yeah, they're all freedom movements. Meanwhile, the chat room of this actual live stream, if you say anything even remotely critical of Bitcoin, you're immediately censored. So, we're well aware of what the right wing's version of freedom is. It's freedom to say what they want and no freedom for anybody else.
President Bukele makes his own brand now, is
Kill the central bankers!
.com. You could actually go buy some coffee right now.
Bitcoin is anti-war.
Bitcoin is gunpowder. So if one country adopts gunpowder, then you really have to adopt gunpowder as well to get into this paradigm of mutual assured destruction.
Yeah, Bitcoin is love, Bitcoin is gunpowder. Bitcoin is anti-war. Bitcoin creates mutually assured destruction. It's whatever you want it to be. Just keep buying it.
Satoshi Nakamoto, in January of 2009, mined the first Bitcoin.
Stable coins. Do you know what a stable coin is? Does anybody know? Please raise your hand.
He brought about an asset that will change the world. And this is our Louisiana Purchase moment.
Which, again, equating Bitcoin with the Louisiana Purchase just seems completely absurd. And you can see going through all of this. And there's many, many more examples that I could have used about just crazy analogies that they were using. But you almost get, you get crazy fatigue. And that's a U.S. senator saying that. This is our Louisiana Purchase. Forget buying a huge swath of land with loads of resources that people actually need. Let's get these digital tokens. It's just the same thing, people. It's just the same thing.
She's been orange pilled.
Liberty and freedom.
Free at last! Thank God Almighty! It's free at last!
Never mind mining Bitcoin. Start mining the neurons of these lunatics.
Bitcoin is love! Kill the central bankers!
We are the party of common sense, okay?
So there you have it, people. It really is that kind of absurd, Okay, this music's going to make me go nuts. This is me kind of just having fun with my voice. So that's it. My takeaways from the convention were very similar to the one previous year. How incredibly right-wing everything is. They have just completely lined up along these weird ideological lines where fascism is good and white is black and oppression is freedom and that kind of stuff. Everything that they complain about is ever present in Bitcoin, from powerful special interests that make your life miserable. So buy into Bitcoin, even though there's even a greater concentration of wealth in the hands of fewer people in the world of crypto than there is everywhere else. But somehow if you give them the money and power, it will be different, right? It really is crazy. And I keep thinking, how long can this last? Where is this money coming from? When is it going to kind of fade out? But I will say something. There's a lot of evidence that things really are fading away. If you look in social media communities, you don't see the same number of people. You see a lot of posts, but they're often, as a moderator of one of these communities, I can tell you how many sock puppets there are. These are people that have multiple accounts. And when you ban one of them, suddenly, depending upon what system you're using, you get notified that somebody has tried to evade ban by using another account. And we get lots of reports. And it becomes pretty obvious that you think you're talking with 4 or 5 people, but you're really talking with one person. These people are just insidious and obsessive. They're an insidious mist that just covers the social media community to try to make you think that there's a lot more people like this than there really are. So just stay the course and keep it going. And hopefully more and more people are just realizing that there's not much substance behind all of this smoke. And if there's anything I want to accomplish with this, that's what I want to do. I want I want to kind of call attention to the bandwagon that these guys are running around in circles on, and show that it doesn't really make sense, and it's shameful a lot what these people are doing, especially political leaders. Now, I know people might say, well, you spend a lot of time criticizing these people, so you kind of benefit from it too. Well, this is not materially beneficial to me. I'm really just truly doing it because I want to stop this fraud. And I would be happy if it all just went away. I'm not going to be worried if suddenly nobody wants to hear any anti-crypto talk anymore. This show is called ioRadio. It's not called I Hate Crypto Radio or I Want All, it's going to, we'll pivot and we'll talk about a ton of other things, but this is a priority right now of just stopping this fraud and this grift from festering. And even though it seems like things are gotten even worse now that we have actual presidential candidates saying they're going to, set up a strategic Bitcoin reserve, don't hold your breath on that. It seems like the more this thing just doesn't go where people want, the more desperate they are, the more crazy promises they make. And boy, they're getting crazy. So where else can it go? Stick around and we'll see. And in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And remember, if you disagree, if you think that crypto is actually good for something, reach out to me, adam@ioradio.org. Drop me a note. I am happy to platform somebody who has something interesting to say, and I'll give you an opportunity to prove me wrong. Until next time, though.